know those questions to ask. Yeah, and so just to nail, and those of you that kind of get this stuff already can just kind of fall asleep for a minute, just to kind of nail this down. Some of the things that we're talking about here, AMI, you'll hear that term a lot, advanced metering infrastructure. You also have AMR, which is just remote read capabilities and things like that, and that's kind of an early adopter approach. And most of you probably have this. I know that I do. If you walk out, if you've had your meter swapped out and you have an LED instead of big dials turning right on it, if you look at it, you'll usually see something about cellular. If you pull information off the meter or look up the model and things like that, it's probably working over cellular network. And that's what a lot of stuff now is doing as kind of the toe in the water. And when you talk to the utilities that are doing that, they're like, yeah, we're not really so sure about how this other stuff's going to work out. So we're just going to get, basically they gain remote disconnect and remote read. They're not walking up to meters and reading data off of them and having guys in trucks doing that anymore. So that's kind of the first wave. For the radio infrastructure.
So radio tech, you do have everything across the board. You've got so proprietary RF, which, to be honest, a lot of them made themselves because there wasn't at the time a good product out there, or a good protocol out there that would do what they needed. I mean, you think about the type of environment that meters and other types of infrastructure like this needs to operate in. You've got very low throughput requirements, right? I mean, it's not like you're doing wireless broadband to your house or something. I mean, it's very small blips of information, probably spaced out across maybe 15 minutes, an hour, or longer, or just infrequent commands that come in and then acknowledgments that come back. And really, you just need to make sure that it gets there, right? You need to have some amount of fault tolerance built in so that you can go through like brick walls and it can bounce around all these different buildings and be able to get you that. And there were not a lot of great options for that, so some of them made it themselves.
Yeah, and some of these technologies, like once we got under the hood and looked at the ICs and the designs and actually pulled, and we'll get to some of that later, but like pulled things like patent docs and stuff, these are companies that the particular wireless tech, they created 15, 20 years ago. So you couldn't, you wouldn't be talking about, even things like UVDO or Zigbee or other stuff as options for it. So, that was, sort of designed with that mindset. In some cases, and actually, irrelevant to our talk, like doesn't apply, right? But in some cases, you're actually seeing power line stuff. So to some extent, think like X10. That's not probably an entirely fair assessment, but utilities are using the actual power line itself as a transport rather than radios. And there's a lot of rationale to that too. So if you can use your own wired infrastructure that you already have and piggyback along that for your network and your infrastructure, it makes a lot of sense. Something that you see, across the board in a lot of places, even at a simple level, is a lot of these substations and reclosers and sort of core infrastructure are already on maybe some kind of nailed T1 or a WAN or a 56K line or a modem. So that's a lot of the backside stuff.
And a lot of the stuff that people, particularly, or the people that we talk to in utilities, are very excited to get rid of for various reasons. It's rather expensive to run T1 lines out to individual devices. So.
Right, and that becomes cost benefit to going with some kind of wireless tech to do this.
So WiMAX, another common citywide thing that we've seen. WiMAX has the advantage of it being again open standard that has had some amount of people looking at it. You'll still run into, of course, configuration types configuration types of problems, possibly implementation problems, so that maybe if the tech itself or on paper looks great, we've seen some problems in some of the individual devices and how they're made and how they're hardened themselves. Oftentimes those little devices are little Linux boxes that have all the things you would expect to go with that. It's got the and I should clarify that when we say WiMAX here, this is, in our experience, not been WiMAX like the way you guys have heard of WiMAX being sort of an ISP or something along those lines where they're blanketing a city with a network so that you can do that type of data transfer. But these are private WiMAX networks that would be citywide, right? So it would be owned by a utility or some sort of utility provider. and would be backhaul for all those individual devices within there.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, if implemented properly, you have a lot of the same. I always say like the nutshell definition of a lot of the WiMAX tech is that it inherits a lot of stuff from from 802.11. So it has pre-shared certs and the ability to authenticate clients on a per client basis and do per node encryption and all these other kind of things. So like if you set it up right and you lock it down, it's not terrible. You still have, and obviously people have proven that out with Clear and some of the other networks, you still have ways to join the network potentially if you have a device. And you do have, which is unfortunately sometimes the argument that we hear for the proprietary stuff, you do have consumer devices that you can buy that may make it possible for you to at least capture traffic in the network. The Zigbee stuff, and we have some more stuff on Zigbee in general. There's a gentleman with dreadlocks around here somewhere that knows probably way more than we'll ever know about that topic. So we're not gonna beat that to death. But that is something that you're seeing a lot of the infrastructure. Actually, not just for, I think what most people know about Zigbee is for home area networks and for your consumer devices in the home, thermostats and refrigerators and all this other kind of stuff. But there are also AMI vendors that are using Zigbee backhaul type stuff for neighborhood area networks and things as well.
Of course, cellular networks, as we already mentioned, oftentimes you'll see cellular networks for backhaul that'll plug into some other type of blanket RF or other type of network that it just uses that simply as internet backhaul in some cases, that it literally just straight over the internet in some sort of a encapsulated encrypted tunnel. But when you start looking at these individual devices and all the different types of options that you can get with them and the things that plug in, they'll always come with some sort of EVDO or CDMA or GPRS.
Yeah, and that has the same, a lot of the same disadvantages to a nailed circuit, which is that one of the reasons why actually WiMAX is getting a lot of adoption is that the utilities can get devices and get permission to broadcast on some range of spectrum, and not essentially they become their own telco or their own ISP and run that infrastructure. Whereas in the case of something like using Sprint's network or Verizon's or whatever, the cost is less than WANs and T1s, but they're still paying for bandwidth and service. So yeah, we have seen some Wi-Fi in this space too, which we kind of laugh at. But yeah, straight up, Wi-Fi. Right on, straight up bona fide Wi-Fi, and with limited configuration capabilities and things like PSKs and no certs and all kinds of other nifty stuff. There's a vendor that's their big selling point in the AMI world that we use Wi-Fi. It's an open standard. Anybody can use that. And yeah, we're kind of on the fence there too. I mean, the issues, like say same things that that we sort of mentioned about WiMAX, which also apply to Zigbee. That it's an open spec, it's an open protocol. You can get the gear. Obviously we all have it in the case of Wi-Fi. But there's also a lot of merit to that as far as you as a utility can also see what the hell your network's doing pretty easily. So. Maybe neither good nor bad, I guess. Yeah, and we've kind of hit on some of that. A HON is a home area network. You have neighborhood area networks, and then also backhauls, some kind of out-of-band management or in-band management that is typically some kind of control channel for all of these devices, whether it be meters or whether it be substations or anything else. Yeah, and when you get down to it, really at the end of the day, it's all old school Scada that's somehow been bolted into some sort of a newer tech. In general, all the protocols that are in use are all been defined. Some of the ANSI standard stuff, some of the things that we messed with, but all been around for a long time and have just been converted and bolted into the stuff we're talking about. Right, and yeah, fundamentally that's how a lot of these devices work under the hood. It's all very well understood. So ultimately, yeah, somewhere in that in that transit, somewhere down the line, you're talking some Scada protocol under the hood eventually. A couple of the AMI vendors have built their own, essentially transports that allow them to talk. In particular, C1219 and 1221 Scada are Scada spec